Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself, and I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
Hello, Thomas.
Hello.
Welcome to the Alternative Dog Moms.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we're really excited to have you here today. You're one of the most knowledgeable people. You're an animal naturopath, a certified nutritional consultant, certified as a drugless practitioner, which I definitely want to learn more about. But I always love kind of hearing your background and how you got started in working with dogs and working with dogs in a more holistic manner. So do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm originally from Norway, and that's where the accent comes from. And when I came over here, I've been around dogs all my life, but when I came over here, I just got more and more interested in longevity in dogs, especially Great Danes, because I also had Great Danes in Norway. And just every time I met someone that loved Great Danes, they always said, "Oh, I wish, I would love to have a Great Dane, but it lives so short, so I don't want them." And they're very hard to adopt out in rescues too. Is people, people are a little crazy when they get a Great Dane puppy and then grow up and live in an apartment, and they I didn't realize how big it's going to get, so they kind of put them into shelters and things. And those dogs that are 3 or 4 years old are almost impossible to adopt out because of their short lifespan. So everything about the short lifespan bothered me so much. And then I started thinking, why I did, what's the reason for this? And because you have these tiny dogs that live into their 20s and then mid-size, late teens and stuff. So, and the Danes, 6-8 years, they're considered old Dane. So that's kind of what started me on this thing. And the more I studied, the more I realized the food has a lot to do with it. So I started experimenting. Because back in Norway, we didn't feed kibble or anything. We always fed raw food. So when I came over here and we're looking for that, there was nothing 20 years ago. It's nothing about it. There was a little bit on the internet. There was some groups there. It just come along at that time when I was doing, so I joined those groups. And then I learned more about raw feeding. It started with the book, Give Your Dog a Bone. What was his name? I never remember his name.
Ian Billinghurst.
It is him, yeah. And that's got me over to a raw food diet, a little more structured. But after a while, I modified that. But then we start talking about it in groups and things online, and I got a group together where we start feeding raw and communicating and things. And that led to my first pilot study, sort of, with about hundreds that joined. And we all fed the raw food diet, and we kind of communicated about it. And I said, "Hey, if you can stay in contact with me for a few years, I'll see if I can, start a study and do something on a very low level." And that's what I did. So in the end of those 10 years, that first 10 years, I looked into this. I had 80 dogs left, or 80 pet owners left that submitted on a regular basis some report back to me. And when they kind of lived out their lives, then I made a little chart and a graph of that. And I realized that compared to statistics on the one you go online and say, "Hey, how long will my dog live? I have a German Shepherd. What's the expected lifespan?" There are some charts out there compiled by, I think they're by veterinarians. I'm not sure who's compiling those, but most of them passed those expected lifespan. But what surprised me, I never thought at all in the beginning whatsoever, was the low cancer rates. There was 2 dogs that got cancer in that study. And that blew my mind. And so I figured out, okay, so this is interesting. And that's kind of made me want to do this, expand it. So I started creating a real study, a little bit more detailed, where I asked questions first, and they had forms to fill out and all this. I think you both have gone through it, Kimberly, for sure. her dogs in there. And have expanded on that a little bit too. But and then start adding dogs. About 10, 11 years ago, I started adding more and more. Last 5, 6 years is where I got most of them in there. And so and all my input and all what I talk about, and anybody ask me anything, is feedback from that study, nothing else. I don't go online for anything, very little, but I take everything I experienced. But what I got most information from is now close to over 400 cancer cases I've been involved in. And those give me more information than anything I can find online in books or education or nothing, because these are real life things. And I always get the background, how they, before they got cancer, what they're going through. I'm very careful about trying to document to see if I see patterns. And I do totally see patterns. I almost can, if somebody asks me, hey, I want to give my dog cancer when it's 6 or 7 years old, I know how to do that. I almost like, this sounds terrible, but that is the same thing that repeats itself over and over again. So it's kind of going a little bit back and forth. I got heavy into the cancer thing for the last 5, 6 years. Now, after my last update on my study, I saw things there that now I'm going to go more back into longevity, but still cancer, because I now see more cancer I ever seen before, even in my study. So, but something has to do with that. The dogs have been in there so long now, so they're starting to die. They're getting up in age, so I get more and more dogs that have died, and it just starting to see a trend now. So that's really disturbing to me that I see cancer in dogs, raw-fed dogs, more than ever seen. So I'm trying to figure out that, and I see a trend there too. And the dogs that lived out their life, 13, 14, there was a couple of dogs that was 14 or 16 years old, didn't have cancer, nothing. And I go back in the history and I see trends there that kind of, it's starting to make a little bit sense. I just need much more data to, definitely say that this is really, really a strong trend. Mm-hmm. Since my study is not scientific or anything, it's just an observational studies, I need a lot of data to sort of confirm what I feel is going on. But there are things we can't talk about that I see now, but it's nothing. 100%. But there are definitely trends. And
so when it comes to cancer, I remember when I first started feeding raw, almost 10 years ago, people really believed that if they switched their dogs to raw, that they would prevent cancer. Their dogs would never prevent cancer. I did too.
I totally did too.
And there's so many things when it comes to genetics and environment. What besides, diet, what are you seeing or have you observed in your collection of just all these dogs that is might be another cause of cancer?
There's several. I think one that's really of course, is the diet. The diet in itself is essential. They got to be on the raw food diet. So that's what I'm looking at. Dogs with kibble has a whole different type of, we know you cannot build a strong immune system on a kibble diet. It's just absolutely, completely impossible. So those dogs are much, much more exposed to cancer. But in raw-fed dogs, what I see, because I'm just starting to study that now, a little heavier since I got so many people now that with the report back to me that had dogs that died than I had before. And I still have, when I do an update, I get about 1,000 replies back, and I'm like 200-300 into it. It takes me months to get through all those updates. I don't know how I create that unbelievable job for myself, but this is my passion. But what I see is the vaccination is the biggest one, I think. Mm-hmm. Vaccination, and maybe also, and I see this as a trend, and early neutering, like puppy neutering, like really, really early neutering, I think has something to do with it too. Yeah. But that, of course, those two combined is going to make things worse. Then this heavy use of flea tick and heartworm, I think, is much more devastating than we think it is. Mm-hmm. That is like pushing pesticide into dogs. But what all these things do, it compromises the immune system. So it's all about what are we doing to keep our immune system strong, or what are we doing to destroy it? And these things are completely destroying the immune system. And since we all have cancer cells, it's a normal thing in the body. Everybody has cancer cells, but the healthy body knows how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. But if the immune system is compromised enough, they allow the cancer cells to develop and multiply. So it's these things we expose our dogs to that are toxic to the body itself, but also immune system. So if you can, the trend I've seen in these few dogs that live now longer is almost no vaccination. A couple of them were never vaccinated, and one was never neutered. And that things like flea tick or heartworm, nothing of that ever. The interesting part, and I'm starting to now understand a little bit more, is that my initial study with 80 dogs or 2 dogs got cancer, which is now completely started to stand up more and more. We were like hardcore raw feeders. Like we were really, really feeding raw, like primal raw. Like it was different. We didn't add a lot of in it. And we were very aware of vaccination, flea tick and heartworm way back then. Didn't do any of these things. That were exercised a lot. So this was like a really healthy group. And I think all that combined lowered their risk too. But I know, but I just think these vaccines are definitely something that sits in the body much, much longer than we think. And could even early vaccines in puppies and stuff, I see also a trend that later in life, all kinds of weird things happen, even in a very nicely raw-fed dog that did everything right. They exercised, they didn't vaccinate, they didn't do anything, but suddenly it's like things popping up from nowhere that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I have a little feel like that happened to your dog because you did everything right, Kimberly.
Yeah.
It probably blew your mind when you found out. I mean,
it did. When Sydney was diagnosed, I was shocked. When Scout was diagnosed, I was equally shocked with Scout because he's been raw fed since he was 6 weeks old.
Wow. Okay.
But I think, I keep looking at Rodrigo, who is the reason why I switched to raw, and he's still doing great. And the only difference that I can think of between, Rodrigo and my other 2 dogs is that I was so focused on gut health with him because that was always his issues was gut health. And so I did so much work to get his gut healthy. And today, now every single thing that I do for one dog, I do for all the dogs. Because if it's going to benefit one dog, it's going to benefit everyone. And so everyone, I do a lot of work on their gut health. And they may not exactly eat the exact same diet or the same proteins, but very heavily into gut health. And just when I get new information, doing more research. And I think that truly is, at least with my dogs, that has been the difference.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. 100% agree. There's so many things that affect this, and then you throw the genetics on top of that, Mm-hmm. So what are we doing here? How can we make the best?
Especially because it's like for those of us who have these mixed breed dogs, we have no idea what is in this dog blender of, mutt. We don't know what's coming into them. And, because that's the other thing that was confusing to us at first was, we have 2 sets of litter mates, and in both sets of our litter mates, we lost one of them to cancer. And the other one is just healthy and fine. And the first set of litter mates, we lost a girl. The second set of litter mates, we lost the boy. So just trying to figure out what correlation there is just in that. But the only thing is the factor that we don't have is we have no history with these dogs beyond what we don't know about their parents or anything. We don't know really where they came from.
Do you know when they were neutered or spayed?
I do. And they were, all of my dogs, except for Apollo, were neutered around 7-8 months.
Yeah.
And Apollo was neutered at 4 months. And so he was neutered before we got him. And because of that, that's one of those things where, I have that always in the back of my mind that could be, it could be an issue. But then it goes back to, Zoe, because Zoe and Scout went to get their surgery on the exact same day. Same thing with Rodrigo and Sydney. But it's one of those where you just really can't predict how a dog's going to respond.
You kind of have a study going on in your own house because it's so unusual. To have 2 pairs of litter mates to be able to observe like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's like it's been an example of, there's really no clear place to point a finger, when it comes to raw feeding, because all of my dogs are raw fed. But one thing that's come out of all of this is the gut health, the amount of work that I do on gut health whenever anything comes up. And this isn't how I raised my dogs initially, but it's how my mindset is today. If anything comes up, the first thing I do is start looking at the gut. But with Scout, because he was always so healthy, I just never really did anything with him because he was always so healthy. So it was just status quo. And I don't blame myself, but I do wonder if, along with feeding raw, if I was heavily into his gut health, if that would have made a difference with him.
No, I think you're onto something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, Erin, I got the colostrum.
Oh, wonderful.
The immune system, most of it is in the gut. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's 80% of the immune system. Some people say 70%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's so easy to do. I mean, when it comes to working on the gut health, it's not, I think a lot of us think it's just about the food or going and buying these supplements, but it's also about just allowing our dogs to be in dirt.
Absolutely. That's another thing. You got to kind of bringing back, where are these dogs coming from? How can we narrow that gap from nature into a house? I mean, they're living in a completely, totally different environment that they are designed for. Mm-hmm. They need to be outside. They need to exercise. They need to dig into the dirt. They need to be allowed to play there. Yeah, because that's where they will get their minerals from. Probiotics and things like that is in the dirt. That's the good probiotics. That's another thing. The probiotics people buy, the regular one, is, in my opinion, 100% dead. Nothing is alive.
I love that you brought that up.
It has to be spore-based and soil-based. I mean, there's so many people that I give them all the probiotics and giving this, and what are you giving? And they show me the brand. And I know exactly that, 100% dead, nothing alive in there. And that I learned many years ago, actually from the Keto Sanctuary. The research over there, they had to look into every single supplement they gave these dogs because this was, research backed up by universities. So they tested all their probiotics, that nothing there were alive, nothing. And they even in the tripe, it was dead. There was nothing in the tripe either. So they then found a company that make probiotics, because when you make it, it's alive, but they freeze it and they ship it to the manufacturers that put probiotics into the supplements. Mm-hmm. So we managed to get some from them directly shipped to us for a while. I don't know if you were part of that for the lasted 2 years or something. Then they figured out, what are we doing this for? We're making no money on it. So they cut it out.
Yeah.
But everybody then found soil-based probiotics. It was a good thing. So that's what I've been doing. But it's amazing how much probiotics is sold out there that I know is not working at all.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that we need to, make people a little bit more aware of.
When I had Scout test it with Animal Biome earlier this year, and I was talking to them after going over the results, one thing that came up was they are hesitant about probiotics, because I called them to ask them if they had a probiotic product that I could use when I ferment goat's milk. And they said that they were hesitant about creating a product simply because a lot of the products on the market don't match what's naturally in a dog's gut. And if we start adding it regularly into our dog's diet, we end up replacing their natural gut flora. And I think a lot of people are buying these probiotics. I mean, I promoted one for years, not understanding that it may not be the best idea for your dog.
What I've seen the results with is the dogs with leaky gut, what I think actually every single kibble-fed dog after 4 or 5 years on kibble has a leaky gut. And I've seen these dogs, they also then test for, allergies to different proteins depending what they're feeding, because this leaks into the bloodstream. Phytospore, the one soil-based they call Phytospore, are actually seen working. And they tested it pretty extensively and seen good results with it. So that's one of those probiotics that I recommend if you're dealing with leaky gut. You don't have any real issues. If you feed a pretty good diet, and I don't know the need for probiotics is that strong, but if you do it, any supplement I give half of what's recommended, and I also don't do any supplements on the weekend, just to see if it can create some need in the body or something. Mm-hmm. And I also fast my dogs once a week. So I usually at that time I also don't, then I drop all the supplements around that same time. Just to sort of create some. But I do now starting to also see another trend, and I think minerals is the biggest thing that's missing in the food.
Mm-hmm.
So adding certain minerals, absolutely trace minerals, has to be added in, because unless you buy food from some place that, on Earth that never been exposed to any toxin, no chemicals, nothing whatsoever, you might have the minerals from the soil gone into the meat or the, vegetables, whatever you feed, where you're hoping to get minerals from. That doesn't happen. And I think that certain minerals, and things I've seen differences at too. Iodine, for sure, make a difference in allergies, especially allergies that where the thyroid is involved, and boron. Boron is kind of new to me. Not new. I've been known about boron for 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I really started studying this year, and I started giving it to some dogs in my study that has joint issues, arthritis, and other things, and it's definitely working. Boron is one of those things that is missing in the food and is involved in so many things. Even the pineal gland, the calcification of the pineal gland is very common in humans, and boron seems to decalcify that and then start working better. People sleep better because it's one of those that make the melatonin. And melatonin is also involved in many other functions in the body. So boron is climbing up there now. Colloidal is my number one, absolute number one supplements in the world. My total favorite one. Boron is just every month climbing higher and higher and higher. And now up there with iodine and those things. So I have 4 or 5 core minerals that I will never, ever be without. So I see that makes a difference in some dogs too.
Yeah.
Especially in the healing from different diseases, even with cancer and things like that. It helps the immune system tremendously when the mineral is there to come for the cellular communication and other things that they're so important in aspect of. And you can't overdo it or anything. If the body don't want it, they just purge it. They just pee it out. So it will just take what it needs. So people are so concerned, I don't want to give that. It could be too much of this. No, just give it in moderate doses.
Do you do any kind of testing to see what minerals might be needed or might be deficient?
No, I used to before with I had a vet that unfortunately died a year ago or 2 years ago, where I can get all these tests done. For the last 2 years, I did it before, and my dogs always came out fine. There was nothing off. They sometimes had some numbers off on some kidney readings, but then I could go back 2 days later and everything was normal. So otherwise, on the minerals, but I always fed minerals since I started feeding raw, because I know I was like anybody else. You start feeding a raw food diet and you're looking at that piece of meat and what's in this thing. There's nothing, there's no label, nothing is printed on the back of the meat, something. You don't really know what you're given nutrition-wise, because you're trained and brainwashed to thinking kibble is balanced. When you turn a kibble bag around, you see all the nutrients in there. When you pick up a piece of meat, there's nothing like that there. So that's one of the biggest fear too, to get into raw feeding. I'm doing the right thing when it comes to nutrients and micronutrients. So that's why I know the gaps in the food I buy. So that's why I cover it with supplements. Mm-hmm. And I think minerals are the most important, because they're missing in the soils. There is no way you end up in the meat in most cases. But so that's the way I always done that. So I never had any mineral deficiency in any dog, which is actually not true. Because my oldest day now, 11, when I adopted him, he had this itchiness. He had a spot on his chest, like a hot spot, that I could not get rid of. It's just itching. Tried everything in the world. And after 5 years, I told this story many times, so people heard it before. I just woke up one day and I had iodine, just in my brain, try iodine. And I don't even know where it came from. And I started putting iodine in it, 2 drops in his food. Within a week, it was half what it was. Within 2 to 3 weeks, completely gone. Wow. So that's why I started getting kind of excited about iodine. And it made sense. He had a thyroid thing. The numbers are often like thyroid. And that regulated itself after with and iodine, there is no iodine. The dogs don't get iodine. How do they get iodine from? So I believe most dogs are going to be don't get enough if through the food either. Even if they feed them seaweed and those things, I don't think those can absorb those nutrients and break it down and get it into the body. But and this had repeated itself many times now with iodine, and had people with allergies, dogs, itchy dogs, and things like that. Especially raw-fed dogs. Kibble-fed dogs is the number one reason a kibble-fed dog end up at the vet is allergies or itchy skin, scratching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the first step to path to cancer, because they get in there, they get on antibiotics, they get on these things, and it works. I mean, they'll stop itching. I said, this is the greatest thing ever. Then 2-3 weeks, they start itching again, and things comes back. And then they go back, okay, that brand might not work anymore. We have another one. And then they go from brand to brand, and they get into this really vicious circle, and changing food, changing everything, frustrated. And it could go so bad that the dog end up with no hair. I had dogs with no hair left. Come to me, I've gone through this whole thing, stopped everything, put on my raw food diet. Within 6 months, all the hair was back. That's the extreme scale. But in the middle, there's many things in the middle there that happens. So you guys know my Instagram account, but when I post this success with raw, all that 400 cases in there where dogs had different health issues. All they did, cut the medications, started on a raw food diet, and the body healed itself. But it had an amazing ability to heal itself. What was frustrating for us with raw feeders is when our dogs get sick. That's now we're at that point. I know how to heal a dog with kibble, easiest thing in the world. Cut out all the crap, feed raw food, and most likely the dog's going to recover nicely. But it gets frustrated when we're doing what we do. We get the dog, put them on raw food diet, think we do all the right thing, and we get issues. But that's when these little trace minerals might come in, like the iodine and the boron and those things. They're lacking something. When raw-fed dogs get sick, something is not balanced. There is something unbalanced, and then we have to figure that out. So I'm trying to document all these things I do with these different raw-fed dogs that have issues. Now I kind of like to get a raw-fed dog with issues because I learned something, But is it not often? 99% or maybe 90% of the animals that I consult with are kibble-fed. Very rarely raw-fed.
Yeah.
But I think Kimberly is right. This raw-fed dog is a lot to do with the biome. There's something that's not balanced in there.
Yeah. I'm going to have my 3 dogs that we have, I'm going to have them tested before the end of the year, just out of curiosity to see. And I've actually reached a point where whenever someone contacts me, because, they've been going to the vet can't figure it out. They don't know what to do with their dog. And the first thing, instead of telling them, oh, we'll switch to raw, I tell them, start with a microbiome test and let's see what's going on. And I even had someone reach out to me and we talked, and they planned to switch their dog to raw until their dog got better. And then they were going to go back to the kibble. And I asked them, if they remember the documentary Super Size Me. And I actually think they were too young for it. But I told them, it's like, there was this guy, he wanted to see what it would be like to eat McDonald's breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 30 days. And he got really, really sick. And, what you're suggesting is like him going back to eating a healthy diet and taking care of himself. But the second he gets better and all the symptoms go away, he goes back to eating McDonald's. What's sad is that the kibble that she was feeding was one of the worst ones on the market. And I told her, it's like, just go online and do some research. And, and of course she said, well, I did research it. And it comes to confirmation bias where you probably, Googled it. And of course their ads.
Of course, they're going to end up on their website.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put the favorable stuff up top. And it's like, you really need to look into it. And I gave her some information and she was shocked because it's like, wow, she thought she was doing really good. And she said her dog does good on that kibble, but well, your dog is super sick, so they're not really doing well. Her idea was, well, my dog doesn't vomit on this kibble, but it's just like, but all the other health issues. And, I think the pet industry has pet parents just all twisted around.
Oh my gosh. it's extremely confusing for somebody trying to research these things, you know. And every dog is perfect until they get sick, whether they're on kibble and raw. You know, it's impossible to talk a kibble-fed one not using kibble with a perfectly healthy dog in their eyes. You know, why would they switch? You feed a dog in 5 seconds and go down to this whole mess with raw food, and maybe they're vegan on top of it.
Yes.
I just had a client that was vegan and dog is cancer, and I do everything you suggest, but I don't want to feed raw. I said, I just can't help you. I've never seen a vegan dog or kibble-fed dog survive cancer ever in 20 years, ever.
Yeah.
Which we know why.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen. No, I feel for people that now is trying to reach. It's worse than ever. You know, it was a little simpler before when, like 20 years ago, you feed a raw food diet and there wasn't so much in between. I eat a kibble or raw. Now there's a lot of stuff in between, other things you can add in. Especially if you read some of these raw feeding books out there, you know, you're just terrified. Oh my God, how am I going to implement all this? And I get all this. My bowl isn't even big enough to put all this thing in. You know, it's just, it's so confusing. And you get this software where you design diets and stuff, and you sit in front of it and spend more time figure out the balance out the nutrients on the computer than you do, you know, making the food.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. It's like, I feel that people are, the difference between feeding raw today and 10 years ago when I started is it's become very complicated with the software and the spreadsheets and
oh my gosh.
You know, people calculating things out. Some people even go so far as to calculate the calories. I've gotten emails, well, you posted a meal on Instagram. How many calories were in that meal? And I'm like, I don't know. And it's one of those where I remember when I first started, one of the arguments people would say is, I don't do that for myself, so I'm not going to do it for my dog. And then the message was, well, we probably should do a little bit more because our dog is a different species. And I understand that. And I understand pushing people to learn more. But I feel like we've crossed a line where it's become so complicated that a lot of people are either doing it wrong because they're just trying to throw everything in the kitchen sink in the bowl to cover their bases, or they're being scared away from feeding fresh food because they don't feel that they're smart enough to do it.
Absolutely, 100% I agree with you. And this is the biggest problem with raw feeding right now, is what you mentioned right there. It just completely overthinking everything and overcomplicated. And talking about calories in a dog, you just look at a dog. If your dog gain weight, feed less. Mm-hmm. And if it's skinny, feed more. I weigh every meal still. I know, I can look at the meal, I know exactly, but I like to weigh the meal. And I let my dog gain weight because it gets cold up here in the mountains in the winters. I let him gain 3 or 4 pounds, and I know exactly how much to put in extra food to do that. And I look at them, I see, how they go in the hips and underneath. I just gauge it. And they are the same size, these 2 dogs. One eat 4 pounds, the other one eat 3 pounds. So that's another thing. That's what we start with at 80-10-10, where we started at 2 to 3% of the ideal weight. These are just beginning numbers. They can vary a lot. One of my dogs eat 20% bones. The other one is 10% bones. So all these things can be varied. But we get stuck on this number, and it gets worse when you get into a computer, when you sit there and try to figure out, they warn you, no, there's too much calories, like you said. There was exactly one talked to me a couple of days ago, so I've been feeding too many calories, so is this dog overweight? No, I'm actually underweight. But according to the computer software, I'm feeding too much. But how does that computer know what your dog needs nutrition-wise? Every dog is different. Every human is different. And the piece of meat you bought in your store, how do you know that is exactly what the computer says it in that piece of meat? And the piece of meat Kimberly buy in her store can be very different from what I buy when it comes to micronutrients. So the whole thing is a complete guessing game. Then, who came up with those numbers originally? How much is it of everything in 2 ounces of chicken? Who decided? When did that get decided? That's it many years ago. And we all know if you figure out the nutrition in foods and vegetables and fruits and everything is much less today than it was even 10, 20 years ago. So all those numbers can't be right.
Right.
You add that to what does each dog need? we don't know that. So it is like a mystery game that nobody really know what's the perfect nutritional for your dog and what is for your other dog.
Yeah.
Luckily, it doesn't work like that because the body knows. The body will ask for what it needs. I just said feed a variety of food. That's the key. Variety, variety, variety. And then you eventually will, not eventually, but then you will, give what the body needs, the resources to balance itself.
Yeah.
If you do the 3 or 4 different organ meals, like I always done, 2 or 3 different organ meals, then 4 or 5 different proteins, and egg every other day or so, almost there you have a perfect meal right there.
Yeah. Years ago, before I actually published this book, you and you and I chatted on the phone. And
do you have another one coming out, don't you?
I do. I really need to finish editing it. I'm halfway through editing it, and I'm hoping to get it out in October. It was supposed to come out first in May, then June, then August, and then September, and now October. But that was like our main conversation. I actually remember I was walking around in our yard and we were talking, and that was the thing about every dog is unique. And, it probably came from you of feed the dog in front of you and focusing on my dogs rather than on what other people are doing with their dogs, because their dogs aren't my dogs and vice versa. And what you were saying earlier, I have a dog, Rodrigo is 58 pounds and Apollo is 78 pounds. And Rodrigo eats more food than Apollo does.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because Rodrigo, I mean, he did, that's just how it is. I've always thought, well, maybe he has a higher metabolism. I don't know what it is, but he's always been the dog, no matter how many dogs we've had, that ate the most food.
Yeah.
And if I feed him less, he'll start losing weight. And so he gets like 12 and a half to 13 ounces per meal versus Apollo, who gets about 12 ounces per meal. And it works for them.
Yeah. No, it's the only way. You cannot follow that. There is no standard for how much you feed a dog, and it is individually. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It varies. You just got to look at it and know when you think you have a healthy dog. You got to know there's nothing wrong to see a couple of ribs if you had that kind of dog where you actually can see the ribs. People freak out. Then people meet my dog. Oh, he's too skinny. No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Because people are used to fat dogs, they like overweight dogs.
I think that's something more pet parents need to give themselves permission to do, is just kind of try this, observe your dog, see how they work, and then adjust as needed.
But all this is comforting for somebody come from kibble to have some numbers, some guidelines, something to start with. So the 80-10-10 is perfect, is fine. And the 2 to 3% of ideal weight, that's a feeding daily. That's a good starting point, but then don't get stuck on that. Then you observe your dog. How is this working and things, and then you adjust accordingly. And that worked for most. And that at least it takes some of the mystery out. It just kind of the biggest fear for the people I say is the balance. That is the absolute biggest fear, that they don't know how to feed a balanced diet. And my approach is always that whatever you do now, if you feed kibble, almost anything you put into that dog other than kibble is going to be better, as long as it's sort of food. And even if you'd fed chicken for 1 month, 2 months, you do so much better. You wouldn't hurt your dog. You will put nutrients in it. But nobody does that. But they like the idea, oh, I can do that? Yes, I have people that fed chicken to the dog for 17 years, nothing else. So you can do it. But you want to put other things in, but they after 3 or 4 days, when they just realize the dog is still alive and doing well, then what else can I put in? What else can I put in? This is fun. I can see improvements. And that's the good thing what we do with raw feeding. You see improvements so quickly. Nothing I can think of can change the dog from kibble going on raw and see these amazing improvements. From the poop, drinking less, all these immediate results, which encourage people to continue even if they're terrified. So very, very few people after 1 or 2 weeks or month and then had started to add more pieces of protein and things will ever quit and go back. Unless you're the friend that you had that wanted to just improve the health and go back to kibble. But another thing with the kibble, this is how we brainwashed we are, that people that feed kibble in the morning and raw in the afternoon, and the reason is they're just going to make sure to get all the vitamins in kibble.
So when you talk to people who have been feeding kibble, are they open-minded to trying raw? Do they usually, once you explain it to them, are they open to it, or is it always like an ongoing like battle or education, or what does that look like?
No, the reason I come to me, they have some serious issue with the dog, usually cancer, and they're willing to do anything because they're going through the whole thing. They're going through everything with the vet. They're going to chemo. They're going through all kinds of things, and they at the end of the rope, and the vet says, nothing more I can do. And then a good portion of those go online, and somehow they find me, and then I get those. Those in most cases will never survive cancer because it's way too far gone. The immune system is destroyed, but I can extend the life. I can extend the life and have the end of life be pretty comfortable compared to if they stayed on chemo, done other things, and it's never a good ending in these dogs. So that's the good thing in those cases. Other cases, the one that had dogs with some serious issue, they have tried different things, and more like earlier on, they start researching online and find out, raw food seems to be very popular for this and this. Because when they go on a site, any type of group, and they say, my dog suffer from this and this, eventually somebody going to put in, you need to change the diet. You need to go on a raw food diet. And that's how, what is that? And then they get it that way. Those are easy. Anybody with a kibble-fed dog that has no issues, it's almost impossible to change. They have no interest. Why would they? Unless they're researching themselves. So I get the easy ones that already set up to, they want to change. And they whatever I suggest, sort of, in a sense, they will do, but they are much more open. So there's no, but, still there's, how many out there feed kibble? 95% of dog owners or something, isn't it? It must be 90, over 90 is on kibble. Those are no interest in changing. The one that really eventually changed has a history of cancer, maybe 2, 3, 4 generation. Parents had dogs with cancer, the siblings with dogs with cancer, just see cancer everywhere. And at one point, this is not right. Something is wrong. And they go online and research. They will eventually find the raw food, at least now. Before, it was much, much harder to figure that out. But now, almost anywhere you go, somewhere at one point, somebody's going to mention a raw food diet when you have a health issue with your dog. So I those are the one I get. So this little, I don't have to convince anybody. I just have to get the fear out of them because they haven't started because they're afraid of doing something wrong. You read this book. Sometimes you figure out, if I don't do this right, I put my dog in danger, and nobody wants to do that. But I see that is completely almost impossible to go wrong on a raw food diet short term. Yes, you can go on. People I know have people that come to me that have fed, ground beef for 10 years. Nothing else. Ground beef. That's all they feed. And dog has cancer or something, But that's short term. Switching and go on one protein short term would just benefit everything. I had dogs that had cancer that had fed raw food, ground beef and apricot seeds. That's all they did, and beat the cancer short term. So there are all kinds of things we can do short term. That's even with drugs. Short term drugs don't often, do a lot of damage. Chemo short term, there are ways to limit the damage to healthy cells when you do chemo short term. So I'm not against all these things. It's just this long term of doing something that might not be healthy that can damage dogs. So,
just out of curiosity, are you familiar with the use of mistletoe in cancer treatment?
Yeah, I know a lot of people use it. I don't know if it's working, honestly. I do believe mushrooms are a really good one. A blend of mushrooms, or cancer-fighting mushrooms. I do believe that is I do that to my dogs as a prevention. And I don't think that can hurt whatsoever. And when mistletoe comes up all the time, and I don't see any damage doing it. But the thing when you fight cancer naturally, at least the way I do it, is trying to find 4 or 5 different cancer-fighting supplements and use that at the same time, and hoping that one of them stick or do something. And if it does, and the dog is better and tumors go down and other things, honestly, I don't know which one did work. I know apricot seeds have worked by itself several times. I had total proof of that. I've seen it with my own eyes. That's the only one I can say that I know alone could do something with cancer. But I like to add other things because I've seen apricot seed not work many times. Absolutely no effect. Didn't do anything. So, but that's the one that I see most positive with. But also, like I said, I've seen things where it doesn't work or nothing works. If you can get the immune system to use these cancer-fighting supplements alone, is not going to beat cancer. You got to get the immune system back online. That's the ones that beat cancer. That's the one that extend themselves many years or months if they can get the immune system to respond a little bit better. And I think that's what happened with you, Kimberly. You got the immune system up because they beat the deadline big time with the lymphoma, didn't they?
Yeah. I mean, 500.
They predicted 3 months or something with chemo, 6 maybe.
He lived over a year and a half, beyond his diagnosis, and it was. I think the beauty of it is, I think although I'd much rather have my dog, but having lost him after all that time. The oncologist that we work with, when we first started, she wanted me to take him off of a raw food diet.
Yes.
And I don't believe in arguing with veterinarians. It's just,
no, me neither.
So I just said, okay. And I think she knew that I wasn't going to listen. But, when he passed on, she had to, here's a dog that was raw fed, that she did all these. And because I was always upfront with her about what I was doing, any supplements I was adding, just in case anything would conflict with the chemotherapy. And so when it was done, I hope that for people that come after me who have raw fed dogs with cancer, she'll be a little more open about the diet, or people who have kibble-fed dogs. She's now seen a raw fed dog really beat the stats, and maybe she'll encourage a fresh food diet now.
That I've seen a lot, almost every single time. If they switch to a raw food diet, it absolutely gets better and extend the life. And that is almost like and they will say it because they know dogs with cancer have compromised immune system, and then they have this thing that bacteria in the raw is going to kill your dog. Never, ever seen that in 20 years. Yeah. Once that switched to raw, they could be deadly sick. They maybe live 3 or 4 more days or something on the end. It's never that. That is not what would finish a dog. They will benefit. If they can get those nutrients in from the raw food, they start feeling like, oh my gosh, this is looking better, and they act better, it works better, and there are just improvements. It never goes the other way.
Yeah.
So that's sadly that they will do. That's the first thing they say. Just no raw food diet.
I get it. From their point of view, I get it because they don't believe that we're going to do the work. And then I think that that's what also has led to raw feeding becoming so complicated, because people want to prove to veterinarians, like, look at all this that I'm doing. Where, someone emailed me the other day because they're convinced that I'm feeding my dog wrong. And this is what I learned. And I'm like, I understand. And I explain what I did. And I was just like, my dogs are fine. They're healthy. And I will adjust and change as they adjust and change. It's just like, it's really not that complicated. And I've actually reached a point where now I just tell people I may not be the best person to ask, because I like it to be easy. There's nothing you're going to say that's going to convince me to make it more complicated.
That's exactly the key. We need to make it easy for people to do it and take the fear away. And then so many more people will go on that, because this is what's stopping it, the complication and the fear. And honestly, these books coming out is just adding to that fear more than anything. I can't tell you how many people, I read this book and I don't know what to do, and said, no, forget everything. Just start with one meat group, and then to get used to that your dog will live one more day after eating that chicken. And if they do that, it just encourages to keep going. And then you can start studying these things and add to your diet as you want. But the basic is just get your dog on a raw food diet and then grow from there. Don't think about what you're going to end up with or all the things that you can add in. It's just going to confuse people so much and scare so much or get so much, plant so much fear in them that they won't start.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the fear. It's the biggest thing I see now.
And then you have veterinarians, scaring you to tell you that, this is really dangerous. And and what's funny about that is I've even had veterinarians when I tell them this is what I feed my dog. Like if my veterinarian's on vacation, so she has a temporary veterinarian and they're like, oh, I see your dogs are raw fed. That's very dangerous. And when I explain to them what I do, I've actually had veterinarians turn around and then just start asking me, oh, so are you doing this? And like, they know about raw feed.
Oh yeah, they do.
But they just can't recommend it, like either because the clinic won't allow them to, or because they're worried that I'm not going to, like that I'm going to do something wrong, or, because I have seen some diets, people will send me recipes and ask me if I will look at the recipe. And there are like 25 ingredients and it's so complicated where it's just like, where did you get, why are you?
No, that's another thing. This whole recipe concept too is in my opinion, just makes it even worse because you are human. You can go if you want to make something. You're just starting to become your own manufacturer of raw food, like in the sense that you're trying to create this end product that is absolutely perfect. And there is no such product out there. But how you feed?
We usually do like more of a pre-made commercial raw.
Yeah, for convenience. Yeah.
For convenience and honestly, just for confidence that I'm not messing it up.
You can't mess it up. It's so difficult. Trust me, it's so difficult to mess it up. But no, I understand. A lot of people do half-half. Like they have some commercial and then they do their own. But Kimberly, you do 100% own. No, you do sometimes too.
I still have some commercial because sometimes it's nice to have commercial on hand if I can't feed. If I'm sick, I just thaw it out and give it to the dogs. Or I'm going on a trip in a couple weeks, and so I'll have commercial for my husband so he can just feed that without thinking. And there's also some brands where I can't get the protein, but my dogs do well on it, so I'll buy it commercially.
No, I think it's fine to mix it up like that.
Yeah.
But the problem is a lot of people can't afford it, so it becomes definitely more expensive to buy.
Yeah. And I've definitely leaned more into the DIY over the past year because of the prices of everything. And it's just so much easier.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, but
I can't find the beef under $4 a pound now.
Yeah. Oh gosh, and rabbit here is like anywhere between $8 and $10 a pound.
I know. I'm like these giant Danes are just killing me with a budget. Well, that's 7 pounds a day.
Wow.
That's another thing with the daily. You feed once a day, Kimberly?
I feed twice a day, but then I fast twice a week.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Okay. All right. But you don't like that intermittent fasting on a day, like feed once a day?
No, what I do instead is I feed between a block of time. So my dogs eat between 10 and 3.
Okay.
And then they don't get anything outside of those hours.
Oh, you feed them twice between 10 and 3?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I never heard of that. All right.
Yeah. Because I figured, with intermittent fasting, that's what I would do for myself is I wouldn't start eating until 10 and then I would stop eating like at 5 or 6. And that way I'd have that, I don't know how many hours that is, but that 15-hour fast, for example. And so that's what I do with my dogs.
Yeah, that's kind of what I eat. Breakfast at 11. I eat dinner at 7 or 9. That's all I eat. I don't eat anything more.
Yeah.
And then I have all these hours until the morning. And I like that. But that's myself and the dogs are always, like for 20 years, fed once a day.
Yeah. Well, and I cut back on treats, and, if my dogs do get treats, like maybe they'll have a regular breakfast, but then they'll have raw meaty bones for dinner, or in the afternoon or something. So that's what like today, that's what they'll do is everyone's getting rabbit heads. So that's what they'll have.
Oh, that's healthy. All right. I never got into treats either. Never fed my dog. And they don't even know what that is.
They're so expensive too.
No, yes.
So expensive. And I started I bought myself a new dehydrator, and because I have friends who raise
Oh,
animals
that's good. Yeah.
and they give me the organ meat. So I started dehydrating the organ meat for treats. And so I have tons of treats.
Oh, that's good treat. Yeah.
And so that's what, if I'm going to give treats to the dogs, that's what they'll get.
That's good.
And
I
I
always
consider it
suggest
part
that
of their
too.
meal.
Dehydrate some meat and give that as treats. It's much cheaper.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
All right.
So tell us about the rescue and rehabilitation center that's coming up.
Oh, that's not turned out to be my biggest nightmare of all time. No, I have to do this. It's the third phase of my study because I want to show everybody what I'm doing live. I want to go and rescue a really sick dog from a shelter set up to be euthanized because there is no funds to heal them or treat them, all those things. So I would take that dog in, put on my modalities, and then show the world how powerful raw food is or how powerful food is for healing. And I just got to find the right property and I got to get the funding for it. And that's it. It's much more difficult than I thought it was. I've been close a couple of times, but when they really dig into what I'm going to do, then they kind of back off to they say, this is a little bit too strange, feeding dogs raw food, treating dogs with cancer naturally, all those things. So but it's still something I have to do. And I'm going to find a way to do it. And I just going to find a good location for it. And I'm leaning towards Idaho because Idaho is one of those states that have no mandatory vaccination laws. You don't need to vaccinate your dog. There's a couple of counties that has it, but in most of the state they don't. And because that will be the number one. But I want a big enough property so I never have to take my dog outside that property too. So it shouldn't be a problem. Just flying under the radar all the time is stressful too. Because here there are like vaccination laws and things like that, but trying to minimize that as much as I want. So that is in the making, and my goal is to open centers like that all over, the world. It could be one person rescue one dog, but just kind of following these modalities, and because I know they're working, I've just seen it so many times. But I wish I was closer, but I'm not. But that's still the goal.
And so how can people find out more and get involved with all that you're doing, and if they want to work with you?
Well, they can find me on the longlivingpets.com is where they can. I still take dogs in for the study because I realized I kind of hit the wall around 6,000 during the pandemic. That kind of went back a little bit, but I can't pass. People are dropping off, are losing them. They don't have the email address more. I had no idea how to find them. And so the people that join is kind of compensating for those that I'm losing. So I want more people into my study because I realize that this study is going to go more than 30 years because it has to be a lifetime study. Any other study I'm not interested in sharing because the only way we can know something is that they lived out their life and, how long did they live? What did they do during the lifespan and all these things to either shorten their life or lengthen their life? And because any other short-term study of anything when it comes to longevity make zero sense to me. But so I will continue with it. But I want to have people eventually coming in that I can, make sure they can take over from me because I know this study going to outlive me for sure. But they can join on the longlivingpets.com. That's where they can sign up. And then, there is a place there where I have a little tribe, like a membership application where they can tell them what they want to do. It's on the same website, Long Living Pets. And I know Erin is a member of the private network I have. That's something I have outside Facebook because I'm not really into the social media anymore. And I've just given up not given up, but it's just too much energy put in with nothing coming out of it. I know Kimberly loves being on there.
She's so good at it.
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm not good at it. I wouldn't be able to do that. But we need somebody like you out there, that's sharing these things. I know you take flack for it and you have people coming after you and all that stuff. But, you are a side of truth, so nothing should bother you. This is what I like about what we're doing. We are on the side of truth. That means more to me than anything.
Yeah.
I don't care what people tell me or whether they criticize me. I have enemies too, and they say really bad things about me. That doesn't bother me one bit because I know I'm speaking the truth.
Yeah.
They can argue with me as much as they want, which I never do. I don't waste my time doing it, but I don't mind. I just say, okay, they just don't know better.
It's also a lot nicer now because there's so much more information out there that whenever someone comes and disagrees with me and tells me I'm sharing dangerous information, I can come back and it's not like I'm just sharing blog posts, but I can actually go and find veterinarians that now say garlic is safe for dogs, or and I can give them studies and information, and it's interesting to me because no one comes back again. They just stop.
Yeah.
Because what can you say? It's like, I'm not just saying like, well, one person gave me a screenshot of like the AKC and stuff like that. But I actually sent him, here are articles by veterinarians. Here are books that talk about this. And either they block me because, or they just go away. And it's weird because I think that's a testament to people are starting to open their eyes to the fact that, it's not complicated, and a diet of processed food is, if it's not good for us as humans, it can't be good for the pets.
Well, if people start criticizing you at one level or other, they are sort of, agreeing with you in a sense that they bother even arguing with you. They're aware of what you're saying, but maybe they disagree because they know you're speaking the truth. There's some weird people out there that just like to be, creating confrontations and things and think they know more than others. But there's no doubt that certain companies and things have planted people out there to argue with you. I don't think that's, I know they say that, but I think that might be, some truth to that. Because they feel the raw feeding is growing. They can't stop it. There is no way they can. This is a grassroots movement that is so powerful, even if it's so small, because the results, everybody, even the veterinarians see the results. When you have a dog and you bring it back 6 months to a year later that had cancer and doing fine, they take note of that. Dogs with allergies that have been on all the medication come back 3-6 months later, totally fine. Fur is grown out. Everything is fine. No allergies. And they ask what you did. Oh, I switched to raw food diet. So they know these things. And we know, you could tell the commercial. If you saw the kibble commercial like 5-10 years ago compared to now, it's different. Now you see these pieces of raw meat, like falling down from the sky and the dog running through this meadow. And you just imagine oh my gosh, they're feeding these nice pieces of organic meat and stuff. So they know that is a threat. And the fact that they actually classify dogs as omnivores is the biggest tell sign that they're putting that on their website. Dogs are omnivores, and the veterinarians bought into that.
Yeah.
And that sort of justify feeding that type of food a little bit more than feeding a carnivore a kibble diet. And, that makes no sense if you know what a carnivore is. But if you know what an omnivore is, then, maybe kibble is good for omnivores. But there is still no evidence that dogs are turned into an omnivore anywhere. But no, they're glad you asked this because I was smart enough to put how can you help is actually a tab on my website. So if people want to help.
Well, I'll make sure we have links to all of that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm so overextended everywhere I do. I have no idea that this is going to grow into this monster that he has. And every time I push that button for an update, I just know, okay, my next 3-4 months is just out of control. And I don't know why I'm doing this. But then again, when I start reading these things, the feedback from the update is just the most encouraging thing in the world. Because people, no changes. And if there is any change, that's usually a good one. But if it's not, then I contact them. Maybe we can do something here. But it is such an encouraging and such an positive thing for me for putting so unbelievable much work into this over the last 20 years that I know it's working. And that's why I feel so confident that I'm on the side of truth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, what did you buy, Kimberly? I got a note. Something popped out of my computer.
Oh, you see that?
No, it's get a notification and make sure I ship things out.
I bought some more colloidal silver. I like to have plenty on hand, and I bought some boron.
Yes, try. When you get that, I'll tell you exactly how to do it.
Okay.
Because 1 teaspoon had 3 milligram. So add that to the food for the first week or so, 2 weeks, and then you can double it for a while. Then you can go back. But I'll work with you. This is going to make.
You're getting my order next.
I know.
I'll get to do more of these.
I know. I bought so much stuff from that store, but I love it. I mean, the colloidal silver is. I mean,
even for yourself, if you feel a little bit off, you have a scratchy throat, you ate something, your stomach. Okay, what's going on down here?
Exactly.
And just take half a glass of that, and it's gone in an hour or two.
Yeah, it's. I put a cap full of my dog's water dishes every day. I do it. Yeah, cold season. It's my friend.
I agree with you. It's another powerful version of it too, where you add DMSO into it if you have some serious issues. Mm-hmm. I had a client now that has a bone cancer, and we start using this as an experiment: boron, DMSO, and CS injected through the butt, right in. Oh my gosh! This dog just quickened up in a week. Hasn't been walking for a week before, and then started walking again. And then she just texted me here 2 days ago. He's running, like with big letters with 50 exclamation marks. Dog hasn't run in a year.
Wow.
And then buddies things like garlic all over the house, because that's what DMSO would do. But I'll take that for a healthy, some improvement in my dog.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
I know.
You guys are awesome. And I'm just part of the group that spread these good things about feeding dogs the way they're supposed to be fed,
I appreciate just taking away the complication of it all. It's like
exactly that's what we're going to work on. We've got to really, really work on that, getting her started. I tell you so many times that people, I don't want to do it. Can you do me one favor? And you don't promise, you don't have continue nothing. Feed chicken for 1 week. Can you feed chicken for 1 week? Oh, I guess I can. And they do it. And they not have one single person. No, that didn't work. Within 2 or 3 days, they say, can I feed something else? Can I put some beef in there? Can I put this in there? And they're so excited.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you can get them, because that is the first step, like with anything that's new and fair, is just taking that first step is the biggest challenge. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, these people are every single time wants to do more, way before I tell them to do it. Right? I think we're starting on a raw food diet with 5 different protein, 2 different, all these things that you look at a recipe that you get in a raw book. It's just this. First of all, the dog most likely have massive diarrhea. And that's going to discourage them. Sometimes they throw up because the stomach, what is all this stuff? I better get this out. And so you get all these scary things right up front. And that's not good. All right. We can go on forever. Yeah.
I totally can.
We can. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go work out.